everybody, Kizzy Bug here. With October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I wanted to touch on this very sensitive topic. We all know that the mastermind's father was an abuser, and we have seen a great deal of abuse from his father on his mother and other members of the family in the older videos. Some of the worst videos that I had the displeasure of seeing were the ones where the mother was treated horribly, called horrible names such as the B word, for an example. She was never treated with any kind of love and respect. She was constantly put down and told, or it was even implied, that she was stupid. She was used for her paycheck, and how dare she spend her paycheck on anything she wanted, even though she was the one who was holding a job and keeping her family afloat. The mastermind never respected the parents' alone time, barging in on his parents being intimate. Well, if you want to call it being intimate, because in one video you hear the father calling the mother horrible names during their alone time. And of course, it was filmed for profit. Her misery made them money. People laughed, and even their fans said the mother was a horrible person. And I have seen it mentioned where people said they hated this lady and that she should die. Can you imagine? It was bad enough that she was being abused at home by her own family and by the man who was supposed to love her. But then to have people further abusing her online, that is a shame. What does domestic violence and abuse look like? Well, this is what it looks like. There are oftentimes physical abuse and sexual abuse. Physical abuse is the use of physical force against someone in a way that injures or endangers that person. Physical assault or battering is a crime, whether it occurs inside or outside of the family. The police have the power and the authority to protect you from physical attack. Any situation in which you are forced to participate in unwanted, unsafe, or degrading sexual activity is sexual abuse. Forced sex, even by a spouse or intimate partner with whom you have consensual sex, is an act of aggression and domestic violence. Furthermore, people whose partners abuse them physically and sexually are at a higher risk of being seriously injured or killed. Emotional abuse. Just because you're not battered and bruised doesn't mean you are not being abused. Many men and women suffer from emotional abuse, which is no less destructive. Unfortunately, emotional abuse is often minimized or overlooked, even by the person being abused. The aim of emotional abuse is to chip away at your feelings of self-worth and independence, leaving you feeling that there's no way out of your relationship, or that without your abusive partner, you have nothing. Emotional abuse includes verbal abuse, such as yelling, name-calling, blaming, and shaming, isolation, intimidation, and controlling behavior. Abusers who use emotional and psychological abuse often throw in threats of physical violence if you don't do what they want. The scars of emotional abuse are very real and they run deep. You may think that physical abuse is far worse than emotional abuse, since physical violence can send you to the hospital and leave you with scars. But emotional abuse can be just as damaging, sometimes even more so. Economic and financial abuse. Please keep in mind that this is a subtle form of emotional abuse. The abuser's goal is to control you, and they will use money to do so. Economic or financial abuse includes controlling your finances, withholding money or credit cards, making you account for every penny you spend, withholding basic necessities such as food, clothing, medications, and yes, even shelter. Restricting you to an allowance, preventing you from working or choosing your own career, sabotaging your job, making you miss work, constantly calling, stealing from you, or yes, even taking your money. Now think back to some of the old videos we saw of the mastermind's father. We can attest to seeing a lot of emotional abuse for sure. Sometimes a little bit of physical violence. And of course, I just mentioned earlier about him worrying about her paycheck. Now, I remember him making her account for every penny she spent. And on at least one occasion, when she leaves to go to New York, he spent her whole paycheck on himself buying clothes. So we can say that he stole from her and took her money. And he had no remorse about it. None whatsoever. Abusive behavior is most definitely an abuser's choice. You can't blame that on his childhood because as an adult, you can decide if you want to change and better yourself from your own upbringing, or if you really don't care. And in the old man's case, he really didn't care. He never got help for his traumatic upbringing, so the abuse he suffered, he put everyone in his own family through the same abuse. Abusers use a variety of tactics to manipulate you and to exert their power, including dominance. They always have to be in charge of everything. You have no say. You will obey and do exactly what is asked of you without question. You can be treated as a servant, child, and more importantly, as their possession. Humiliation. This is a tactic to make you feel bad about yourself. You may feel hopeless, worthless, and never good enough. This is their way of making sure you don't think you deserve somebody better. If you feel bad about yourself and think no one else will want you, then you will stay with your abuser. They will hurl insults at you, call you names, shame you, all in the attempt to destroy your self-esteem. Isolation. This one is important actually. Very important as it affects your support system. The abuser will isolate you from your family and friends because they want to increase your dependency on them. In some cases, the abuser will keep you from attending school or work. If you want to go somewhere, see someone, or do anything, you are first expected to ask permission, and mostly the answer will be no. And you may or may not get an excuse from the abuser on why the answer is no. Threats. Abusers will use threats to keep you under their control. Even if they don't threaten physical violence, they will threaten to destroy your life if you leave them. If they help you with something financially, they may threaten to cut off any financial support. So please keep in mind that threats aren't always about physical violence. It could also be other things as well. Now, on the more serious side of things, your abuser may threaten to hurt or kill you, your children, other family members, and even pets. They may also threaten to commit suicide, file false charges against you, or report you to Child Protective Services. Intimidation. Your abuser may use a variety of intimidation tactics designed to scare you into submission. Their tactics include making threatening looks or gestures, smashing things in front of you, destroying property, hurting your pets, or putting weapons on display. The clear message is that if you don't obey, there will be violent consequences. Denial and blame. They will blame their abuse and their violent behavior on a bad childhood, a bad day, or even on you and the kids, the victims of their abuse. Your abusive partner may minimize the abuse or deny that it even occurred. They will commonly shift the responsibility onto you. Somehow, their violent and abusive behavior is your fault. It is important for me to mention that the abuse that they have put you through is never your fault. You are not responsible for them having a bad childhood, bad temper, bad day. It is also important to mention that the abuser minimizing is narcissistic behavior. Narcissists are never responsible for anything they do. It's always someone else's fault. Some key things to remember about abusers. Abusers pick and choose whom they want to abuse. They don't go through life abusing everyone. They usually save their abuse for the people who are closest to them, people in their life that they claim to love, such as a spouse, children, and even pets. Abusers carefully choose when and where to abuse. Of course, this is an obvious one. They don't want to get caught or have their secret exposed. At best believe, they can control themselves when others are around, which goes back to the point I mentioned previously. They pick and choose whom to abuse. They may act like everything is fine in public, but lash out instantly as soon as you're alone, and generally that is exactly how it goes. Abusers are able to stop their abusive behavior when it benefits them. Contrary to what you may believe, abusers are not out of control. They can fix their behavior real quick. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They are able to immediately stop their abusive behavior when it's to their advantage to do so. For example, like when the cops show up, or a boss calls, or when extended family and friends may show up. Violent abusers usually direct their blows where they won't show. Many physically violent abusers carefully aim their kicks and punches where the bruises and marks won't show, although there are cases where you will physically see bruising and cuts. But generally, they don't want to be found out. It's all a dirty little secret of the abuser. Remember that. Recognizing the warning signs that someone is being abused. People who are being abused may seem afraid or anxious to please their partner. Go along with everything their partner says and does. Check in often with their partner to report where they are and what they are doing. Receive harassing phone calls from their partner. Talk about their partner's temper, jealousy, and possessiveness. Warning signs of physical violence. People who are being physically abused may have frequent injuries with the excuse of accidents, miss work, school, or social occasions without explanation, dressing clothing designed to hide bruises or scars. Example, wearing long sleeves in the summer or sunglasses inside. Warning signs of isolation. People who are being isolated by their abuser may be restricted from seeing family and friends, rarely go out in public without their partner, have limited access to money, credit cards, or the car. The psychological warning of abuse. People who are being abused may have very low self-esteem, even if they used to be confident, show major personality changes. Example, an outgoing person becomes withdrawn, be depressed, anxious, and yes, even suicidal. So, if anyone says the old man was a saint, please watch those old videos and keep in mind the points made here in this video. You may think what you want, but the old man was far from a saint, and his family still pays the price of his actions as a husband and father. I know as a wife and mother, it is hard to leave if you don't have the resources, but if you have supportive family and friends, they can help you get back on your feet. A local domestic violence center can help you find shelter and to help you get the resources you may need. You are not alone. And this is the same for men too. If you are in a domestic violence situation, there is help available to you as well. The first step is making the first step. But don't ever stay in a situation where you could face deadly consequences. You have to protect yourself, children, and your pets. Statistics on domestic violence and animal abuse. 52% of victims in shelters leave their pets with their batterers. Up to 48% of domestic violence victims are unable to escape their abusers because they are concerned about what will happen to their pets if they leave. 71% of pet-owning women entering women's shelters reported that their batterer had injured, maimed, killed, or threatened family pets for revenge or to psychologically control victims. 32% reported that their children had hurt and killed animals. While most domestic violence shelters do not provide on-site shelter for animals, programs exist that can help pet owners with safe animal havens. You may be able to ask the National Domestic Violence Hotline, if you have to call them, if there's any places they know of where you could take your pet, or you can even inquire for someone else who you might be trying to help as well. If you suspect someone is being abused or know someone who is being abused, here's what you can do for them. Tell the person that you're there whenever they feel ready to talk. Reassure the person that you'll keep whatever is said between the two of you and let them know that you'll help in any way you can. Remember, abusers are very good at controlling and manipulating their victims. People who have been emotionally abused or battered are depressed, drained, scared, ashamed, and confused. They need help to get out, yet they've often been isolated from their family and friends. By picking up on the warning signs and offering support, you can help them escape an abusive situation and to begin healing. Where to get help. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. On the web, you can visit international directories for domestic violence agencies for a global list of helplines and crisis centers. Alright guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for your continued love and support, and let's really try to bring awareness for the month of October. Let's not forget the victims and survivors. Let's not forget the people and pets who have lost their lives to domestic violence. Let's always strive to make an impact and make a change. Push those hashtags. Support your fellow friends and YouTubers who speak out on such a delicate and sensitive issue. And more than anything, keep moving forward. Support the cause and support each other. I love you guys a lot, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!